What we are going to talk about is what I've labeled the philosophy of a change agent and following the right white rabbit of change. And I I was thinking about what to talk about, and I felt, how about I try to reverse engineer how I think about change? Because my experience is we all have our favorite ideas, favorite tools, favorite approaches, right? But why are they so favorite to us? Why do we enjoy them, or why do we pick different tools for different situations, which I find myself doing a lot, right? So, what the heck is going on underneath that? And maybe I can talk about that. So, this is my kind of way to approach this and invite you to kind of join me in thinking about what change is and how it really works. And I'm super curious to hear what you guys think and what practices you have and what your mindsets are. But this talk is going to be about my take on this, my reality, I guess my truth, right? So you're gonna have to put up with that for 45 minutes, but I'll share it with you, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So the way this is gonna work is we're gonna have a Q&A session at the end, and you can see the slido.com thing. You can take out your cell phone, take a picture of that, and it should navigate you to a web browser, or you can just go to slido.com in a browser and kind of punch that in. There's a bit of a warm-up question here. What made you decide to join this talk? So you can kind of, I guess, participate a little bit more actively here and not just completely sit back and listen. So if you're in that couch sofa in the living room or in your kid's bedroom, maybe you need to perk up and maybe do something. It's up to you, of course. And yeah, I'll take the questions at the end. So that's what this talk is about. So let's get started. So the way I'm going to structure this talk is like this. The emphasis is going to be on the two top side things. What I call here the three fundamentals of change, and to me that is really looking at what change really is. What's going on? Why do things change? What's actually happening? And because if we're approaching this topic thinking, how can I be change agent? How can I have agency and kind of direct this change in some way that I see it as desirable? What do I need to know about how change is, what it is, or how it works, right? So I have three fundamentals there that I'm going to share with you. Then we're going to look at a couple of insights for leading change that I've come to value pretty highly. Some insights that I have had, and I'm going to try to explain why I feature those in this talk. We're also going to have a couple of practical principles for leading change, and what I could, if your question is, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? What do we do, right? Well, this talk is not going to put a big emphasis on that. I'm just going to share like 6 what I consider high leverage pillars that you can apply. How do you actually do things? And then just, for some fun at the end, I'll share very quickly a bit of a self-assessment formula. So if you're one of those people out there that are trying to drive change or create some change or dealing with change that's kind of happening to you, or the some version of this, it's a formula that you can apply that and kind of self-assess what's the probability that we're going to succeed with the change we're designed to make. So that's what the talk is going to be about. It's going to be about 35 minutes and hopefully some Q&A. Okay, let's dig right in. And again, Slido number is 5568. It's going to disappear now, and we're going to take a look at it back at the end. Okay, number 1 fundamental. Change happens naturally. This looks very obvious, but it's really deep, and I want to really explain why it's such an important fundamental to really acknowledge, right? The point is, change is really happening all the time. A lot of the time, change has already happened, but we just can't see it because we're so stuck thinking about the world as it used to be. We identify with things we love and enjoy, right? Our role in this company, or something I love to see happening, something that gives me joy, sense of fulfillment, that makes me feel good at work. It could be just in life, right? I just love going to that store and buying that candy bar like on a Sunday morning or something, walking my dog. And so we have this bias that we always carry with us, but the world is actually changing more than we may be aware of. That's the number one thing. The second part of it is the fallacy would be that I think I need to create the change. If nobody creates the change, nothing's going to happen. I don't believe that's true. I think things are changing intrinsically. There's a high degree of momentum of change because it's connected to lifefulness in itself, and life is ever evolving and changing. So what does that mean to us? Well, when you're going to lead change, it means we're guiding change that's already happening or is about to happen or is ready to happening, or we're sparking from that current, right? If we're trying to create change that is in violation with the change that is already ready to happen, we're less likely to receive traction, right? We can connect this to the very big changes that we see in society today. What's moving with the current, what's moving against. How can I leverage that, and how can I create from that acceptance, and that's what's going on. So that's the first fundamental I want to share with you how change works. And the key point here, it is already changing, right? Number two, I believe change happens in natural phases. So it's not necessarily a cycle. Cyclical changes are more likely to be things like new things emerge, and there are elements in what's new that we recognize from the past that kind of gets transferred. But it's really more of a mix-up. It's more of a remix rather than the same thing happening over and over again. That's how I see it. So here are an example of 4 phases that to kind of connect what I'm trying to talk about. So something is created in birth and given birth to as a novelty, right? Something emerges from nothingness, right? And that would be one change. It requires one type of creative act or change agent stance, if you will, right? You got to be willing to go where nobody's gone before, right? To use the Star Trek term, or kind of just do something that you don't really necessarily know what it's going to be, right? You don't necessarily know what's going to happen, where you just like throw something out there and see what happens. There's an element of that, and there needs to be a level of comfort with that to be creative or be a change agent in this type of phase. The next phase could be the flowering. So once you have something that's new and novel that's created, and it needs to flower up to understand where it fits, right? Finding that niche where it can settle and kind of grow hold, right? That's a different type of change agent stance to facilitate. And the next thing would be, well, okay, we were getting rooted here because we're kind of fitting into a place. Now we can rise and grow to our potential. And then it's going to be more about that, right? Growth, right? The world values growth. Well, I would say the world values this phase of change, right? That would be a different way to see that. And then, of course, there's the fading into the glory, right? The reminiscence, and eventually the letting go and the discreation of something. And my point here is, it's not necessarily everything going up and down. It actually is created, and then it dies, and then something new replaces it. Death is necessary for birth, right? It's just, there's no creativity without something not being, something being discreated, basically. So what does that mean to us as a change agent? Well, it means if you're going to lead change, it means you need to be very comfortable leading facilitating that transition of phases like this. That's kind of like what you're supposed to, at least for me, that's a helpful frame for me. Okay, so, and of course, that's going to probably mean different types of stances depending on what type of phase we're in or whatever is needed or necessary or desired, right? Okay, third fundamental is there are 3 doorways to what I call human change. And it's these 3. So human beings, we have identities, individual identities, shared identities, the we, right? Multiple we's that I am a part of. And we also have habits, things we are, accustomed to doing, things we enjoy doing over and over again, maybe things we don't like to do over and over again, but we're still doing it because of different reasons, collectively and individually. And we also have a network of relationships. And we're talking about human change or changing organizations or changing human behavior. These are the 3 doorways to that change that I would see. So leading change in this aspect, from this point of view, is we're facilitating the movement of human nature through these 3 doors, right? These are the doorways you can use to kind of help people transition in in some way. If you desire to see change in organization, if you want your team to kind of become a different team, identity-wise, in their habits, in how they connect to the outside world or to each other inside the team, these are the keys. These are the doorways you can work as a change agent. And not necessarily that only, it's more like this is how human change happens, I believe. So it's just part of the nature of change. Okay, so here's the intermission big challenge. If you are interested in this topic and you say, hey, what can I do to become a more effective change agent? I think the number one first thing you need to do is just acknowledge that this is my challenge as well. I can't just put this challenge on others and kind of pretend that I'm outside of that process. You are part of this process, and maybe it even has to start with me, right? It has to start with you. So self-leadership, I believe, is fundamental to change, and as a change agent as well, because I believe to change, we need to first change within and then without. There's, we always make this distinction, a knee on the other, but it's actually, we're actually always connected. We're also always coupled in some form of dance. So if I believe I only need to change the outside, there's going to be pushback from that both on my inside and on the outside. It needs to be connected. So probably this means that I need to consider changing in order to myself, my own identity, my own network of relationships, my own habits, my own point of view, which is unique and valuable, right? As everyone's is. If we're going to accomplish something together, we all need to be able to fit ourselves to each other in those three doorways in order to actually drive something and create great outcomes. So I believe, I really mean it when I say that I think it needs to start with self-leadership in terms of change as well. Okay, let's dig into the insights. So the number one insight when it comes to actually driving change or working to change something, I believe acceptance of what is the first key. So what I mean by this is not, things suck and I should accept that and not change anything. That's not the point. The point is, if I don't accept things as they are, that things actually suck, and I fully accept that, I'm gonna mentally push back from reality and then try to idealistically create something create a movement that's not based on what's actually there. So adopting a realist view and a creative attitude, I think, is the key. Number one insight for me. So that's what's going to unlock change to happen with a minimum of pushback, right? So think of it like this, right? What you resist will persist, right? If I push against what's already happening, there's a level of insanity to saying this is actually happening and I won't accept it, that it's actually happening. That's the fallacy, right? We should say, this is happening, I don't like it, but it's actually happening. I fully accept that it's happening. It's like I'm stuck in the mud, and now I'm going to get out of here. I need to accept that I'm fully stuck in the mud in order to actually do something about it. Because if I don't, I'm generating pushback even before I start. Mental pushback. And if you do this with other people, they're going to sense that you don't accept things as they are, because you're kind of rejecting it. So you're rejecting the situation you want to affect in a different way. So you're starting on a minus. So that's the first insight. The second insight is about human nature as people, right? So human nature, that is the ground where organizations change. That's where people change, where teams change. It's alive with us and without us. And it's this human system where change can happen, has the potential to happen, right? It's not in some mental abstraction about what an organization is. It's not the org chart. So thinking about systems thinking, right? It's a super helpful tool. So why is that good? Well, one of the really key things about systems thinking is if you think about the whole organization or your whole team, what are the emergent properties of the whole that I would desire to see? That is something you want to get clear on. Say you want this is going to be a property of the whole. This is going to be the property of the whole. This is what we want from the whole. We don't necessarily know what the parts of the whole are going to be, but if we start and think about the system in that way, we can create the parts so that they fit to each other to generate that emergent properties on the whole that we desire to see. That's possible. Right? That's the power of systems thinking. Where I believe system thinking can be a bit of a trap and a fallacy is when you look at it as a mental model only, and you say, I'm going to make a mental model of the organization. I'm going to manipulate that model and believe that reality is going to change. That won't happen. And the reason for that is, again, the real ground for change is the human nature itself, the system of network of people and our human nature. I can only experience that by participating myself. So I have this area of influence, and I put myself into the system in order to experience it and affect it. I can only affect it using my influence if I'm in it, right? I think that's real. It's like if you go into a cave that's super dark and you're carrying like this big torch, you're walking around in the cave because I need to participate in the cave to see it, right? I can only see parts of the cave at one time. So I can see rats over here, I can see bats over here, maybe there's a river here, maybe there's some spider webs, and maybe there's a spider I don't know. And I walk out of the cave and I make this mental map of what's in the cave. That map is not reality, right? Reality is in the cave, and I can only illuminate its parts. So if you have multiple people in an organization, they all have their torches, and the true reality that I desire to change and have an impact on, that's to understand it. I need to compare the lived felt realities of all these people, right? So a technical way to phrase this is, there's no privileged position where you can see the whole system. That is a fallacy. So think of it that way. Think of it a way to understand the system, but don't mistake it from the system or your model from the system itself. The system is in the human network. Okay, long-winded but big point. Okay. Number 3 insight: clarity of goals and making real choices is the key to enable change. So I'll be brief on this. Really talking to people, the multiple torch bearers, you can weigh the torch bearers by how much influence people have, right? Everybody in the organization does not have the same level of influence for many reasons, but it's kind of make a weighted sum of the experience of people and try to decide what's the most important goals and get clarity on that. That's super important. Second part, making real choices, saying we want to go for this and not that, and making that clear for people. That's gonna drive change. That's a really important thing. So what those goals should be need to be discovered, and they emerge through conversations and narratives. By narratives I mean stories. What's the most important thing and why? And that's kind of how you seed fruitful change with low amount of pushback, in my view. Okay, insight 4. This is another. It could have been a fundamental, but I think it's important as as an insight for practical things as well. It is truly distributed and concurrent. Change happens everywhere at all times, and people are doing things everywhere. Meaning, your organization and your teams are actually changing right now in things that you don't know about. In that cave, there's a big snake coming in that wasn't in there. Maybe you didn't even know it was there. And people are dealing with it now and you don't know about it. It's just, you need to accept that this is how things are and actually use it. How can I put it to use the fact that change is distributed and concurrent? We're going to look into that. Insight number 5, the second to last one here. This is just a truth. People will act on what they see as most important from their point of view, from their local unique perspective and what they believe in, right? So you can rely on and need to accept that this is what's actually going to happen. So what do I mean by this? Well, what is important for different people, right? What's important to me? You may have your idea, right? Maybe you're a coach. I'm like, I know this is the most important problem I'm seeing, right? Our teams are doing this, but they should be doing this, right? Is that a problem that only you see, right? Is that a real problem? Or is it more like, I can't deal with the fact that they do things differently? So how do you gonna negotiate what's real? Well, you need to go out and find yourself. You need to talk to people and this is what I see, tell me what you see. And kind of find out what's on the top 5 list of problems that people see in your organization, and see if that's on the same top 5 list that I have. So I guarantee you, if you have a different top 5 list and you try to drive those goals, or addressing those problems as your agenda, It's not going to happen. Or you're going to have to do it with a lot of force, right? And there are going to be more pushback, and you're going to have question marks over people's heads, right? So, and again, self-leadership, right? Maybe I am the odd person out. Maybe I need to validate that people see things. Maybe I'm the person who should rearrange my top 5 list. But at some point, you want to kind of land on a shared, point of view on what's more and less important in the organization. And once you do that, this principle works for you, because the more people who agree on what should be the important things to address, you're going to get energy for free, and you're going to get traction and agency and collaboration by not necessarily doing that much. So it may look from the outside as not much is you didn't really do much, but what actually happened is you made sure that, or you were part of it, right? To make sure that we have a aligned view on what's important. So that's another key to, if you want to be a change agent, have an honest, actual truth about this. Okay, last one. Humans are equal part individual and imbedual. And maybe the imbedual is a word we're not used to. It's an actual word I took from Robert Keegan. So it's like a developmental psychology term that I barely even understand. But it has to do with our environment holds the individual. We are embedded in life. We're embedded in society, in an organization. The organization and your surroundings are holding you up. And it can make you easier for you as an individual to develop, or harder, right? It can be kind of, guiding you. But at the same time, you're also an individual. You can make different choices. You can exercise your own willpower to put yourself in a different environment and embed yourself somewhere else. So when we're talking about this as a change agent, we can decide that we're gonna work through all of these poles, right? We can say, okay, let's look at the environment that holds the individual in this organization. Maybe we can change the environment so the individuals get encouraged to develop in a certain way. Or we can change it around and say, hey, this environment is kind of it's too solid, it's too stuck, right? Maybe we can encourage the individual people to take more responsibility, individual accountability. It can be anything, right? We can just work both of these poles. And as a change agent, my point is, we all have a bias, right? I know many agile coaches that are like team, and then you have people like individual choices, and people need to be good, and meritocracy, and all of this is viable. So my invitation is for you to engage and inspire our full potential for change. So realize we have a lot of options that we can work here. Okay, let's get into the last part of the talk. I'm going to go through this a little bit faster because it's not the core emphasis. But if you're here thinking, okay, how the heck am I going to put this to use? I'll give you 6 fast pillars here. So number 1, communicate a clear and inspiring vision. What do we desire to see? What's the future potential we want to create? What's possible and what are we going for, right? Make that clear and communicate it. Number 2, connect people with real problems. So a lot of times we push people into solutions, or in other ways try to, hey, please do this. Give them problems. And especially if you have problem solvers that don't know what the problem is, this is very common. It's way too common in software development that I see. Connect people with the problems. If you're building a product, what's the customer problems of the segments you're targeting? Start there. And connect people. By connect, I mean make it real, lived, felt for them. 3, spark from receptiveness, scale through encouragement. It's just a simple way of how do we get started? Well, we start where somebody's receptive to change. Somebody wants to, try something new. Start there. Start where there's energy, and we can't do it like we used to be doing it. Do it there. Create a proof of concept, and then if it really works and you have something going, you have that momentum. You encourage people to try it. Say, don't discard this if you haven't tried it. Encourage people to do it something differently if it's been working. So, and it's a different type of leadership stance, I would argue. 4, lower the threshold for action. So if we've accomplished clear goals and a clear vision and making real choices, now it's time to let people go, right? So, you can look at the organization and say, what are the things that hold people back? What's raising the level of, the threshold for action? What can we do to lower it? Maybe it's more clear mandates. Maybe it's, goals, and let the team, understand that they're allowed to do things. It can be anything, right? Whatever you guys can come up with. Invite participation to list local initiative. The key thing is invite here. Invitation to change. Invitation to try something new. That's something that I believe helps you drive clean change. By clean, I mean you're not forcing people. You're working through people's desires, their creative leadership skills, not their reactive sides. And the last part is, if you get everything right, start moving decision making to where the information is. That's my last pillar. So we're gonna end up here with the last little thing here, and this is kind of like a fun little formula. So let's say you have this big change effort in your organization. Maybe you're a part of it. Maybe you have skin in the game and it matters to you. Well, what's the probability we're going to see the change that we desire to see? Well, 4 factors. I call them P, V, F, and L. And imagine that you rate these between 0 and 1. 1 meaning very certain, and 0 meaning no chance. And then you just multiply them, and you get a number between 0 and 1, which is kind of like a percentage chance that you're going to have. So P means problematic, right? People can see the current situation as problematic and undesirable. To what extent is that statement true? If it's absolutely true, then you have a good chance. If it's not true, people are going to question why we should change anything, right? So that's one key. Number 2, like I talked about, the vision. People can see a future vision that is engaging and desirable. That's necessary for actually desire to go somewhere. And F, people can see a clear and concrete first step and general direction towards the vision. If you have a great vision and an experience that the future needs to change, but no first step, you're going to get frustration. You're going to get that energy for free, but it's not going to be able to go anywhere, right? It's going to be confusion. It's going to be frustration. And the last one, maybe this is the most symbolic one, or kind of like underneath the currents. It's people have enough trust in leadership and themselves to make a personal investment in the unknown. To what degree is their skin, this lived felt sense that there's, we are capable of learning what we need to learn to succeed? Because frankly, usually you don't know everything you need to succeed and get yourself to your target, but you may trust in yourself and your colleagues and maybe the leadership, even the formal leaderships that's there, that I believe with this leadership and this self-leadership, we are capable of getting there. So to what degree do we have that level of self-trust? So you can do this as an exercise. Which one of these 4 factors do we see that we need to address, and kind of work from there? So that's my talk. That's the summary of this talk. And what we covered was the 4 fundamentals of change, kind of like what change, how it works and what it is. A couple of insights for leading change. And then at the end, couple of practical principles for what actually to do, and then that self-assessment formula. So at this point, I'll allow you to, we'll take some questions, and maybe Jenny, if you can let me know what we're like on time here, and I'll start. Oh, fantastic. Okay, I guess I got all excited and got through this really quickly. Okay, that's so much better to have more interaction. So, who's got the first question here? Let's see. Let's start in Zoom chat. Okay, nice to see speakers disc. Yeah, that was funny. Marcus, can you share a story of change that you have been facilitating? Oh my God, that's a big question. Yeah. I mean, Henrik talked about test automation. I mean, I've been a part of introducing that in, I don't know how many teams, 5 or 6 projects, and that's a couple of examples. Another was working with a large client of ours, Bisnode. They're going to change how they do product management in the whole at the group level. I think a couple of the key insights that I mentioned is when you walk into an organization, you can, or a team, you can kind of get a sense for what's unique, right? What's a pattern of behavior? What are the values that are present here? Like, for example, one way could be if somebody behaved in a certain way, would it raise any eyebrows at all, or would it be just kind of invisible, right? So, for example, if I challenge a decision, would that raise eyebrows or not? I know at Netflix it absolutely wouldn't. That's their culture, right? Um, like Marcus, you have he's coming back, I know, to CRISP, and he talks about this. They have a culture of encouraging constructive dissent, right? In other organizations, it's more like, drink the Kool-Aid and get with the program, right? So that's one example. It can be other things like in many product organizations, it can be software developing teams. Like the teams, some teams have a tendency to be kind of inward looking, right? Is that ever questioned or not? So if that's never questioned, then you're going to see some different type of patterns emerge. Difficulties to work over multiple teams, and the communication patterns, and kind of like hard teams, I would say. So those are examples that I've seen more than one occasion. So how do you create a nurturing environment where people freely, respectfully, honestly speak their mind? So besides doing it yourself, yeah. So that's a big topic. The shortest answer I can give: the psychological safety is a concept that addresses that. So it has to do with the Prime Directive, and people believe that at the time we did our best, and we're honestly trying to do our best, and achieve the best results. But psychological safety, it's in a whole talk on its own. I'd recommend you look it up. Google Aristotle research project, and there are many references on this. Okay, I'll take some questions from Slido here. Yeah, the audience Q&A, I don't see any questions here. So what was the question? Oh, the self. Okay, yeah. This one, right? Yeah, that was maybe a little bit quick. So yeah, let's say, I don't know. Let's take an example. You're building, like your product organization. You are building a product to sell it to a target audience, right? And your product leadership is more inward focused. They have experiences. Your product leadership has experience. Customers themselves, and they're in the mindset of, I know what our customers need. We just need to build it, right? So, and you want to, as you said, head of product, you want to change that to, I want us to become more customer centered. I want us to work from customer problems to solutions. I want us to validate problems and validate that something's the right thing to build before we actually build it. So, looking at that situation, to what degree does people in your organization see that it's a problematic approach to not involve the customer in building a product? So if that's to a high degree, we don't have a problem with our approach, then that would be closer to a 0 than a 1. So I don't know, 0.3, let's say, if they're really inward looking, right? And then what's the vision for the future situation that you would desire to see? Well, maybe more of the other, right? Is that clear for people what you mean? To what extent is it clear to the people that are going to be involved in the change that what that future situation is? In what way is it clear to them what you see in this view, right? Let's say you're the head of product, right? That vision that you would like to see, if you ask people, do they understand it, right? And is it desirable to them? And the organization that you have, it's going to be different people with different levels of influence and different interests, and you can, if you want to, you can kind of weigh it by their level of influence. But that's what that is trying to get at, that factor, right? And then F is, what's the first step? How do we get, if we on board and we want to try and do something about this, where do we start? What's something I can get involved with and start practicing on Monday in the office, in the home office, right? So when I'm getting out of the kitchen, with my morning sandwich and my coffee, in my underpants, and sitting down to do work, whatever people do, and with my dog running around, and the kids hopefully in the next room. What's the first step we can take? Is that clear? And do I experience that? If I'm taking that step, does it feel like I'm moving in the general direction towards the vision? To what degree is that true? And the last one is, do I feel that I have a chance to self leadership here, to self lead myself in this, towards this vision? Do I believe in my teammates that they're gonna back us up and not skip and jump out of the boat and kind of wander off? Do I believe that whoever's on the captain on the ship is going to plot a good course? Do I trust that if we do our part, that those people are going to do their part? To what degree is that true? So that's kind of like how I'd recommend using it. So I don't know. I hope that was answering your question. So what's the next question here? I think we've had a couple of more questions coming in. Yeah, I mean, Teoticata is a great way. I mean, I've done it a couple of times. Yeah, I mean, that's one tool you can have. Like that would fit into this. I think this talk as, let's say you. So again, the way I've structured this talk and my invitation is, it was my truth, right? Now you need to say, what's my truth? You can say, oh, I like this part. This inspires me. So you can kind of put that into your mental headspace, your own mindset for driving change, and you say, I'm going to use Teoticata. I'm going to put it to use based on this principle that I got inspired by in this talk, or kind of just make sense with my own way of thinking. So Teoticata is a way to, it's a disciplined way to drive change around specific situations in your organization, right? Things that needs to improve, and it's a way to involve different level of the people in different areas, to drive their own change as well. It's a way to working with distributed way in a deliberate way. So I highly encourage trying it and see if you like it if you haven't tried it before. I gotta admit, I don't know what scarf is. What is scarf? No, I mean, but understanding what's happening inside of the people. I mean, a broader term way to do it, say empathy, right? So it's incredibly important. I talked about human nature being the ground where change happens. You need to really connect with that to that level as much as you can. It's really hard for some people. I struggle with it sometimes, but that's what's necessary to connect with people. It sounds like that's that's one way of kind of getting there. It's from what your short description, but yeah. So how can you connect with people and understand what their lived felt reality is? Lean Toyota tradition has the go to Gemba, right? But it's not just going there; it's actually experience it. Go into the cave and with your torch and lighting up all parts of the cave, so you can actually get some level of impression, right? Because we can only experience this human system by participation. I'm sorry. There's no God mode where you can see the whole part of the map with no fog of war and perfect information in real time. That is not real. You need to go and meet people where they are and understand their reality Because if you don't, you're going to miss out. You might find something that's going to help you and help them. So that connectivity is key, I would say. Yeah, thanks, Benny. Does that answer your question? Or so I don't know anything about Scarf. I'm sure it's great, but use it and try to put it to practice based on these mindsets and these ideas, or maybe if you have a better view yourself. And I don't know if we have more time. If somebody can share some of their insights, I think that would be super cool, and maybe I could learn more as well. Do I believe in Big Bang change, or the only way to go is the iterative approach? I'm pretty tempted to say that's a false dichotomy to a large extent, right? I think if you apply these principles well that we talked about, like understanding, because okay, why is the Big Bang approach often a very risky approach? Well, for some of the reasons I mentioned, right? First of all, the hidden assumption is from a point of view that's pretty narrow or limited, from a few people interpreting what the biggest problems are and addressing them at a large scale without necessarily having the whole cave illuminated, right? And they haven't talked to other people with torches enough. So they select things on their top 5 list that may not be the right top 5 list if you had done that. So that's one part, right? And of course, scaling something that's broken is not helpful because you create bigger problems. So but if you do some of these things honestly, I think you can find the balance between many local changes that you can drive concurrently based on a bigger vision that is having those emergent properties of the whole that we desire to see. Then we communicated clearly as a vision, and that we the big choices of what type of organization we desire to become. So helpful questions can be, who are we becoming as an organization? Who do we need to become in order to succeed? That can be something that, again, you need to have these conversations with people, so the narratives, the stories about why this Big Bang, what it's really about. This Big Bang maybe is not this big project. Big Bang is these big insights into our situation that we all need to experience. Maybe that's the Big Bang we need to have. I don't know. So I would say if that's your approach to Big Bang, like that can be helpful. But if you're just blindly adopting targets based on a very few people having a little conversation, it's likely to be very, very risky, and you may scale your problems. So iterative approach is a way that we it's a empirical approach to kind of avoid that. But I think there are more tools that you can use to your disposal. Okay, so we got some good scarf tips in chat here for you guys who want to learn more about that. Yeah, thank you guys. I enjoyed this talk. Very insightful questions. And if you have any questions about this, again, I think we're going to have these talks recorded, and I think they're going to be on our YouTube channel, right? So, or if you have any other questions, contact me. Go to crisp.se, and there's a page for all the consultants, and you can just send us an email or talk to Jenny. Thank you very much.